I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right. Well, part of my intro was saying that Wendy and Shana and I were committed to our committee and to this process, but we've already shared that. So I will just say we're very happy to welcome David Bowen of Ginger Fox. Maddie is holding down the fort at the store tonight, at the storefront tonight. So we have David with us. Ginger Fox Beverage was created in 2021, so it's brand new. And the idea was to bring sustainable crafted cocktail catering and service with attention to detail to Winston-Salem. And in case y'all didn't read to the bottom of the email that you received, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about them. How did they get to where they are? Well, I love that after they graduated from UNC School of the Arts, Maddie and David ran away to join the circus in Macau, China. I mean, how fun is that? They lived in Southeast Asia for a few years and got swept up in the art of truly next level cocktail and the culinary scene in Hong Kong and other major cities. And they then returned to NYC, to New York City in late 2017. They worked in restaurants and jazz clubs and high-end catering until the shutdown in 2020. When shutdown, they came back to Winston-Salem to accelerate their 5-year plan. They, after a few pop-ups at Sika, they decided to start their brick and mortar store, at the corner of 4th and Marshall, which is in Village Juice, and their nighttime part of the Village Juice store at the corner of 4th and Marshall, which is where Shana was tonight, again, committed to the process. She was there to begin the evening. And,
some of our ice home, I believe.
I now present to you David Bowen.
Yeah.
You're going to have a fabulous experience. It's so fun, but I encourage you all after this class to go check it out, because even though the drinks will be great tonight, they're really, really fun when you go to the storefront. Thank you, David, for being here.
Thanks so much for the introduction, Lynn. Hey, all, it's so good to see you. I can see like a rotating list of everyone's faces. So if anyone has any questions throughout, please feel free to just kind of like unmute and, shout out, and I'll hopefully be able to answer it. So hi, my name is David Bowen. I am the ginger of the Ginger Fox. My wife, Maddie Fox, is the Fox. She's downtown working at the bar right now. But yeah, I'm super excited to be here with y'all to guide you through some of these cocktails. Tonight, we're going to be making 2 pretty classic cocktails. We're going to be making a ginger lime version of a Gimlet with the Tanqueray gin you've got in your kit. And we're also going to be making a ginger lime whiskey buck. So using the same cordial, making 2 different cocktails, having 2 completely different flavor experiences. Really like to highlight with this class how it's really simple at home to make these ingredients and to have, basically just ready to pour cocktails in your refrigerator, so you can not kind of be guessing every time. It's really easy to make something delicious at home. How I like to start these classes is typically just unpacking our kit and just making sure that everybody has everything that they need. So I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but stop me if there's anything you realize you don't have ice or you don't have something to shake in, and you need to run to your kitchen real quick, or run somewhere and get a shaker or some ice. So here we go. The first thing you're going to have in your bag is a little bottle of Topo Chico, this soda water. We're going to use that one for the second cocktail this evening, so we can set that one aside. You should have 2 little mini airline bottles, one of Tanqueray gin and the other of Woodford Reserve. I actually couldn't find a bottle of Woodford Reserve, so I've got a little bit in this jar here. After that, you should have a jar of the ginger lime cordial. So this is all the non-alcoholic ingredients you're going to need for both cocktails. And you also should have another one of those jars with some little candied ginger flags in it. From there, you should have a lime, and then I'm pretty sure that's all that's in the kit aside from the little instruction sheet. Does everybody have everything they need in the kit? Awesome. I'm taking the silence as a let's move forward. Okay, so things that you need to provide from your home. Obviously, we're going to need a little bit of ice for our cocktails. It's good to have, we're going to need some sort of knife and cutting board for cutting a garnish. And of course, glassware. So we kind of checked in as people were rolling in earlier about what kind of glasses we should use for these. Typically for a gimlet, it's served what we call up. So it's strained into a cocktail glass without ice. So I typically like to serve those in a glass with some sort of stem. The idea of the stem just means you're literally keeping your body heat from your hand away from the glass, from the actual liquid, so it's not heating up your cocktail and making it less delicious as you drink it. So something with a stem, something like this one, or something like a Nick and Nora type coupe would also work. But again, as I mentioned earlier, anything is going to work so long as it holds the liquid in the glass. For the whiskey buck, I would recommend something like a Highball Collins glass here with a straw, or just kind of like a rocks old-fashioned tumbler type glass. But again, same thing with that. You can use the same glass for both. It basically is just about presentation and how you want the cocktail to feel to drink it. From there, you're also going to need something to shake in. I really like these 3-piece cobbler shakers for home use. Got this OXO one here. It's got a little measuring cup. It's got your strainer in it. So if you've got one of those, awesome. There's also like Boston style shakers that you need a strainer to use as well. Or if you don't have a shaker at home, no worries. You can use pretty much anything that seals. I think a mason jar is always a really good option for a shaker because it seals really tightly. You can put the cocktail in there, shake it up, and then kind of strain it using the lid to hold the ice back. So everybody has something to shake a cocktail in, yes? Awesome. So let's get started with going ahead and making our gimlet so we have a cocktail in our hand before we learn a little bit. So first things first, I always build my cocktails before I put the ice in the shaker. The reason that I do this is because I typically look at like putting ice into a cocktail and like shaking the cocktail similar to like a baker putting bread in the oven or something. As soon as you've put ice onto the alcohol into the actual cocktail, it's going to start diluting and it's going to start like basically shortening the lifespan of the cocktail. So I like to mix everything together in the tin first, give it a little taste. You can rebalance it before you shake the cocktail, so you can actually make sure it's something you want to drink before before it's too late. So carefully now, let's go ahead and open our ginger lime cordial. And we're gonna measure, it's what I like for this cocktail. I like to do equal parts. We've balanced this cordial to balance basically in equal parts with your gin. So I would start with 1.5 ounces. You have 50 milliliters in your little airplane bottle, which is just over 1.5 ounces. So if we need to make any adjustments, you should have a little bit left in the bottle to fix it. So we're gonna start with 1.5 ounces of our ginger lime cordial in the shaker. And then go ahead and open your, these are hard to open, Tanqueray gin, and also 1.5 ounces of the Tanqueray. From there, if you have a straw or a spoon or something like that handy, give it a little stir. And I like to do a little straw taste, but you get a little bit at the end of the spoon or in the straw, and you taste it. You can also just dip some out with a spoon and give it a taste. At this point, your cocktail should be a little too strong, by which I mean a little too boozy, a little too sweet, a little too sour, a little bit too aggressive, right? Because when we're adding the ice and when we actually shake the cocktail, we're going to be adding a ton of water from the melted ice into the cocktail, which is basically just going to allow all of those flavors to be a little less like aggressive on your palate. I like to think of it like you've got 100 flavor molecules trying to get through one door when you've got the cocktail like this. But as soon as you've shaken the cocktail and put some water in there, you're giving yourself 50 doors for those 100 flavor molecules to get through. It's a lot easier. It basically just spreads out those flavors. So if you want it to be a little bit sweeter, if you tasted it and you're like, I like my cocktails a little bit on the sweet side, dash a little bit more of the cordial in. If you like it to be a little bit boozier, which I'm going to go ahead and finish off my Tanqueray gin here. Totally your call on how you like it, though. If you want to save a little bit of gin for yourself for later, you can do that too. So now we've got a cocktail in here. We're going to add a little bit of ice. a little
Can I show you guys my stolen ice?
Oh yeah, please. Can we see the stolen ice? I so badly.
This was from Ginger Fox like 2 hours ago.
Amazing. I made that ice a little while back. All right, so with home ice, basically I've got these like 1 1/4 inch cubes with a little that we make with a little silicone mold. These are my favorite cubes for making cocktails at home because they're kind of like a really nice midpoint between the like big old cubes and the like little chip ice. But yeah, basically whatever ice you have, just pack the shaker full of it. Let's seal it up. And let's shake our cocktail. I don't really care how you shake. I know a lot of bartenders will be like, they'll do like crazy things. They'll shake like this. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. All you're trying to do is melt the ice a little bit, aerate the cocktail, and chill it down. So shake for about 10, 15 seconds, something like that. You should get if you're using a metal shaker, you should get a little bit of like condensation and like almost like icy, material buildup on the outside. And take your lid off. Mine has the strainer inside. If it doesn't, you're gonna have to kind of, block the ice with whatever. And then strain into the coop. And we have a ginger lime gimlet. To garnish the gimlet, we're gonna do this real quick so we can get to drinking it. You have your lime. So you have the top and the bottom of your lime, right? You're gonna cut it vertically. You cut your lime like that. Then I'll take the knife and I'll make a little slit right in there. So basically just put a little slit in the side like this without cutting through the entire outside of the skin. So you've got like a little cut in like that. And then turn the lime like this and cut it into, you should be able to get about 6 wedges per lime. So you cut it on the diagonal and you end up with a little slit in the side that you can put on the edge of your gimlet. And you should look something like that. If yours doesn't look something like that, that's okay. Hopefully it tastes something like that. Cheers, everyone. So, I'd like to talk a little bit about how to make some ingredients like this at home. But first of all, does anyone have any questions? Does anybody have any, let's ask that question now before we get too far along the road. Just go ahead and open that up. Great. Okay, cool. So how we make these cordials. I'd like to talk a little bit about cordials here. Cordials are basically, how I think of cordials are syrups with acidity. So basically you can use a cordial as the non-alcoholic portion of a sour style cocktail like a gimlet. So basically what it is to make one at home, it's really simple. You should have a little breakdown of syrup techniques. It's the little half sheet there. Basically what you can do is make a 1-to-1 simple syrup. And what that is really just 1 part sugar to 1 part water. And you're making that into, like, you just put it in a blender, or you can boil it, or basically however you need, you can just stir it to dissolve the sugar. And once you have that 1-to-1 simple syrup, you can infuse that with pretty much any flavor. The simplest way to do that is to just boil it on a stovetop. Say you might want to make like a mint simple syrup. Throw some mint leaves in there, boil your simple syrup for 15 minutes or so, and then strain it, and you have mint simple syrup. From there, you could take the 1-to-1 simple syrup and fresh lime juice or fresh lemon juice, or you can do it with some vinegars too, but then it's getting into like what's called a shrub. But basically, if you take fresh lime in equal portions to that 1-to-1 simple syrup, put those together and put it in a bottle, that in equal portions, just like we did here, with a gin, with a bourbon, with a scotch, with a rum, with any of those like base spirits, will make a pretty delicious balanced cocktail. It's a really easy way to make cocktails at home because you have like basically complete control over your ingredients. You know, you're using fresh products. You're not, getting a bunch of preservatives. You're not getting a bunch of like question mark ingredients that you don't understand what they actually are. It's literally sugar, water, and lime juice, and that's all you're putting in there. And it's a really simple way to start branching off and making other cocktails too. So one of the options is to just boil. Wendy, did you have a question?
I just want to know, like, is there a rule how much of this syrup you should make per person, or is it like, is there some kind of guide? Because one time I tried it and I made way too little. And anyways,
too little.
Yeah.
I find a lot of the times the recipes you'll look on, you'll find for these kind of ingredients online are bars that have made recipes for them, which you don't need to make as much as a bar needs. Like you don't need 2 liters of this cordial. So I like to make these by weight. So I'll use a kitchen scale to make these. So you can kind of scale it up as simply as just saying, I'm going to make 200 grams of simple syrup. So I just want a little bit, and I'm going to put, 100 grams of white sugar, 100 grams of water, and then you just have a little bit. So I feel like weight by weight is the easiest way to scale that. So you're not worrying about like, wait, how many cups did I put in there? It's just like a number that you're matching. And as far as like how much to make at a time, I would say, honestly, if you're doing it by weight, I would go with about, give me a second. I would do about 250 grams of each. So I would make like 500 grams of simple syrup. So 250 grams of white sugar, 250 grams of water, and then cut that with an equal amount of the citrus juice. That should give you like roughly a 750 milliliter bottle full, which will yield about 15 servings of the cocktail. And those cordials, because they have acidity, because they have the citrus juice and the sugar in them, they're going to last in the refrigerator. Like, honestly, they're going to last as long as you're going to want to drink them. I've had them last in my refrigerator, just like gotten lost in the back of the bar fridge for like 6 or 8 months, and they've been totally fine. So it's kind of a choose your, like, how much do you want is based on how many cocktails you want to serve. But typically around 1.5 ounces per cocktail is what you're going to use in this kind of recipe.
Can we just clarify the recipe for this particular one? So this is half and half simple syrup and lime juice plus ginger.
This one is actually a bit different. To give you, I'd have to get into some like pretty intense cocktail chemistry balancing and stuff to teach you how to make this one exactly. But I can teach you how to make something basically like this at home. And we're going to look at the actual next technique we're going to look at is called the blanch and blend technique for making a syrup. So if you wanted to make something like this, specifically this ginger lime syrup at home, what you would do is make a simple syrup. So make your 1-to-1 simple syrup, blend it put it in your blender with some fresh ginger. And it's good to chop it down into like little like coin sized pieces. You don't have to like mince it or anything, but just enough so that the blender doesn't have to do the work of breaking down the ginger. And basically just blend that ginger root, the fresh, uncooked, literally just rinse it off, scrub it off. You don't even need to peel it with the simple syrup, and then cut that 1-to-1 with lime juice. And you should be pretty good with the balance there.
How much ginger would you say for your 500 batch?
So I typically do, like, for instance, for this syrup, I typically will do, like, if I'm using 250 or if I'm using 500 grams of sugar, I'll usually use about 350 grams of ginger. So it's, I can't remember the exact, that's
a lot of ginger.
3.5 ratio.
That's a fair amount of ginger.
Yeah, it uses a lot of ginger. There's a very cheap place to get ginger in Winston-Salem if you're looking for ginger. Don't go to the groceries, like don't go to the Harris Teeter or anything like that. The cheapest place I've found to get ginger, it's $1.99 a pound, and it's on Peters Creek. It's the Asia grocery store.
Right.
They have an incredible selection in there, and just like, what's that?
It's like a tree of ginger. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Like you walk in and you can get so much ginger. And like, it's really worth it to use, like, for me, it's really worth it to use fresh ginger because like, you don't get that. I mean, you can obviously do something similar to this with a ginger beer or a ginger ale or something like that, but you won't get that like fresh, like spicy, hot ginger flavor that you get with a fresh ginger.
Yeah, and we found that in the grocery stores, it's incredibly variable. Sometimes they give you like marbles, and sometimes they give you a tree trunk, and so okay, that's great. Okay,
Well,
so
this-
1-to-1 with everything except about 60% as much ginger,
Roughly 60%, exactly.
and that'll keep forever. Because she loves Gimlets, but we always use Rose's lime juice.
I
which
do
is-
not. I just have to say this. Sorry, quick comment. I hate gin, and this drink is fantastic, and I'm drinking it. So your mix is so good. I'm drinking it.
I totally agree. Ours is gone already. Ours is
Great. Oh yeah,
history.
I've been talking here. Does anybody have any other questions about the Blanching blend? Well, actually, hold up. So we talked about how to get like ginger or any sort of, you can do that with turmeric, you can do it with ginger, you can do it with anything that's like a harder, more like vegetable-y flavor. Like you could do it with sweet potato if you really wanted to. But the other way to do the Blanching blend where you're actually needing to blanch, and this is my favorite way to do like a mint syrup. Like if you want to make a really good mint julep, like blanch and blend some mint syrup for yourself, and you're going to be happy all summer long. So basically, like you're going to boil a pot of water for 10 seconds. Hold your mintlet sprigs by the end, stick them into the water, stir them around for about 10 seconds, and then dump that into an ice bath with some water. So you blanch them, and basically what you're doing is deactivating the enzyme that reacts with oxygen and causes the syrup to turn brown. If you don't do the blanching, you can still make a mint syrup, but it won't keep that like vibrant green color. And then from there, take your 1-to-1 simple syrup that you've already prepped in the blender, pick the mint leaves off after you've dried them, or you can use like a salad spinner to get them dry, pop the mint leaves in there, blend it for like a minute until it's just completely pulverized. Filter that through some cheesecloth, like a cheesecloth lined strainer, and you're gonna have this vibrant, like emerald green syrup that is just perfect for any sort of you can make a mint gimlet for it. You can make mint juleps. You can make mint daiquiris, like any sort of things. Like you can put them on vanilla ice cream, and it is absolutely delicious. So that's what I do typically. Like the Blanching blend is typically what I'll do for like an herb, like a leafy herb based syrup. As opposed to just needing to blend it for something like ginger root. And then past that, the most advanced, I would say, technique, and the one that requires some investment into kitchen tools and stuff. But if you already have the equipment, definitely the way to go is sous videing syrups. So if you want to make like a raspberry syrup at home or something with a really delicate flavor that can get a little if you make raspberry syrup with the boiling in a pot method, you can totally do it, but it gets almost stewy. When you heat the raspberries past the point where they're boiling, it starts to release the pectin from the cell walls, and basically it turns into a jam. So you end up with this almost soupy, stewy jam flavor, which is not bad per se. But if you want to capture that perfect, crisp raspberry flavor or blackberries, in peak season or something, the best way that I found to do it is to, again, make your 1-to-1 simple syrup, vacuum bag about 10 to 25% by weight of the raspberries or blackberries, or you can do this with mint or basil or anything. You can also do with the sous vide. So you vacuum bag it, try and get all of the air out, seal it up, and then set a sous vide, an immersion circulator bath, like a water bath, to hold around 135 or 145. And put it in there for 2 hours. And basically what happens is it raises the temperature of the syrup up and holds it at a really low temperature and cooks it at that temperature. So it doesn't actually heat it to the point where it's cooking and making it jam. So you just have this incredible, crisp, bright flavor extraction at using that kind of technique. So if you have the sous vide, if you have a vacuum machine and all of those things, highly recommend taking the time to do that if you want to really impress your guests at a party.
So I do
But
have a
any of those syrups, once you've created them, 1-to-1 with a citrus juice, either lemon or lime. You can't really do it with orange or grapefruit because they don't have the acidity you need. They're a little too sweet. So if you wanted to try it with orange, you'd have to also put in some lemon or lime to kind of bolster the acidity to balance it out. But the easiest is just 1-to-1 with a 1-to-1 simple syrup and citrus juice.
So if
Any
you
questions
sous-
about cordials, syrups, preparation, all that kind of stuff?
If you sous vide, do you then strain on that?
Yes. And you want to be careful. You want to be careful to not like literally like you will end up with like sugar. Like I'm trying to think of a way to describe this. Like basically candied. They're not candied, but you'll end up with like perfect raspberries. They'll just be like pale. It'll leach the color out of them. So take those and you can freeze them or put in your refrigerator or snack on them, dehydrate them or whatever. And they're like absolutely delicious. So yeah, you're just gonna strain it through a cheesecloth, strain it through just a regular mesh strainer works. And then I'm gonna tell you one more fun thing with syrups and cordials. If you are not a person who drinks a lot of cocktails, but you do, or you find yourself with 2 liters of syrup and you were trying to make a half liter of it, you can freeze all of this. So if you take your cordial and just cut it with a little bit of water. So typically you want to add like, I would say about 1/4 to 1/2 of the weight of the cordial in water and mix it all together and then put it in some like silicone ice molds. You can take those cubes and just pop them into your shaker with some whiskey or some gin or whatever you got and shake it straight from the refrigerator, and you don't even need to add the ice. You'll just have like cocktails ready to go, and your mixer is already frozen in your freezer, and that will actually last relatively forever.
How much lime did you put in? Because I made some ginger lime cordial and it turned out a little browner than yours.
Ooh,
And a lot browner.
There's actually, what might have happened for you is, so if you use young ginger, if you haven't used like literally just ginger that is a smaller ginger, it hasn't developed to the point where it's like gotten rid of whatever enzyme it is. I can't remember the actual name of the enzyme, but the enzyme reacts with acidity. And a lot of the times when you make ginger syrup with young ginger, it'll turn this pink color.
Oh, okay.
It's like, have you seen, you've been to like a sushi restaurant and you've got pickled ginger?
Right.
So that's because they use young ginger and they pickle it with vinegars and stuff. So that acidity reacts with the enzyme. I forget the name of the enzyme, and that's probably what ended up happening to you.
Does it taste? It tastes the same. It just looks the wrong color.
Pretty much the same. It's literally just like, it's similar to the process of oxidation, where you've got like bananas turning brown or apple slices turning brown. It's like relatively harmless. It's not like any sort of bacterial growth. It's just an enzymatic change.
Right.
Does anybody have any other questions about syrups and cordials, or do we want to make our whiskey buck? We're moving on. All right. So for this second one, we're gonna talk a little bit more about shaking technique and like whiskey gingers, basically. So a whiskey buck and the buck family of cocktails is like really old school. Like it's a very common drink to like order at a dive bar, right? Like a whiskey ginger, Jameson ginger, any of those things. Like it's what got me into cocktails. It's what Maddie and I started drinking. Like, in college, we would love to drink like, Evan Williams and Schweppes ginger ale, right? And it's so funny to me that like this is like actually a super old school cocktail build. It's from the like 1800s. So people like realized that you can start putting ginger into drinks, and it was a delicious thing to do. So bucks are a really fun category of cocktails, and making them with your own house-made ginger syrup just like elevates the whole experience for me, at least. Because you end up with the actual spiciness that you want out of a ginger beer that you don't often get unless you're using like really top shelf ginger beer. So basically, we're doing the exact same recipe here. It is going to be equal parts So 1.5 ounces, we'll start with, of the cordial. And if you think about it, basically what we're adding is some sort of like concentrated version of the ginger beer that you would get at a, at Harris Teeter or something. We're basically, it's a ginger syrup concentrate that we're making at home and then lengthening with our own soda water. So you have a little bit more control over the sweetness, a little bit control over the acid balance, all of those kind of things. So again, 1.5 ounces of the cordial, 1.5 ounces of the whiskey. Feel free to adjust as you see fit. For this one, keep in mind, we're going to be adding a little bit of soda water. So we're going to add a little bit more water on top of what we added to the gimlet. So it's going to be a little bit longer of a cocktail and less like intense. So give it a taste. And because we're adding a little bit of soda water, you might consider dashing a little bit extra of the ginger syrup in there to balance it out. Totally your call though. Once you've got it to a place where you're pretty happy with the whiskey and the ginger balance, we're going to talk a little bit about how we shake a highball cocktail. So when we shook the first cocktail, the Gimlet, we packed a lot of ice in there. We want to make sure that there is enough ice to properly dilute, to add enough water to the cocktail to allow it to taste good and to drop the temperature, right? For this one, we actually kind of want to do the opposite. We want to make sure we're diluting the cocktail a little bit. We want to make sure we're adding a little bit, we're chilling down the cocktail and dropping its temperature, but we mostly want to aerate the cocktail. Ginger, typically, like if you shake ginger, it has these like proteins and particles floating around in it that froth up, just like pineapple juice or egg whites in a cocktail. So how we do this is we shake this cocktail with 1 piece of ice. And what that's going to do, we're going to shake that to dilution. So basically, we're going to start shaking, and we're going to shake until there is no more ice. If you find yourself shaking this cocktail for 10 minutes and your ice still hasn't melted, it is okay to stop shaking and top with soda. But quick little shakes, fast little shakes typically will, and you can hear it when it turns to just liquid. So from there, I like to break my shaker, and if you look in the shaker, you can see almost immediately why we shook it like that. It's really frothy. It's got a lot of like, I can't get the angle here so you can actually see it. I'm afraid I'm going to pour out my cocktail if I do that. But look in your own shaker and you can see how frothy and stirred up it is. From there, we're going to top with a little bit of our Topo Chico. And you can measure this if you want, but you're topping with soda water. I think don't put too much. Always start with just putting a little bit in, and then you can go from there. You can always add more. You can't really take soda water out once you've added it in now. So I'll put a little bit in, and then I'm going to ice the glass. And for this one, since we've shaken all of the ice to dilution, since there is no more ice in there, we can just dump the cocktail directly over without needing to strain it. And you should have some nice froth on top there. Added too much ginger, added too much ice. For the garnish for this one, you have your little candied ginger flags. And I'm going to try and do this without spilling whiskey buck all over my floor. But basically, you're just going to put it where it's straddling each side. And there's your whiskey buck. Cheers, everyone. Again, if you'd like to add some more water, if you'd like to add a little bit more cordial, if you'd like to add a little bit more booze, now's the time to do it. I'm also going to get the rest of my phone.
Can you use a straw?
I'm using a straw.
Oh, like it's allowed. Okay.
I like a straw. Especially with this one, because if you don't use a straw and you've got the little candied ginger there, you're likely to stab yourself in the eye. Don't stab yourself in the eye. So this style, go ahead.
I don't like whiskey, and that's good. That's good. I love that ginger.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like I always tell people, like I love ginger, obviously. But it's one of those flavors that if you use the fresh ingredient, like if you make the ingredient at home or you get it where it's been made fresh like this with real ginger, it's night and day. Like it's just night and day for me. You can't get that like fresh, spicy, like the like snap you want from ginger. Like you just can't get that unless you're like actually using fresh ginger. And it's such an easy and cheap ingredient to go get. And I think the fun thing about ginger, like this cordial, with what you have left, like it will work with any base spirit. It will work with gin, vodka, bourbon, whiskey, rum, like any of them. There's nothing that I have found, maybe Seaver can tell me differently here, but there's nothing that I've found that doesn't work with ginger. It's like the universal cocktail ingredient. So, does anybody have any other questions about the buck?
I do. Sorry. There's one in every crowd. Sorry.
No, I love it. Are you kidding? This is great.
I have a question, and I hope you won't be offended in any way, but you know the cocktails of other places.
The cocktails of other places. What does that mean?
The cocktails of other places in Winston.
Oh,
Is it a question or a comment?
It was a question. I'm asking. So have you
honestly, okay, so yes and no. So Maddie and I went to school here and graduated in 2015, and we left and lived everywhere else. But Maddie's family is from Winston-Salem. So we've been kind of stopping in and out, back into Winston over the last couple of years. But when we moved back, it was like mid-pandemic.
Okay.
So we didn't really go out. And then we opened a cocktail bar.
Yeah. So do you know the cocktail called Smoke Signals at the Spring House?
That is incredible. Okay, so yes, I do. They serve it with the candied walnuts or pecans, right? The candied nutmegs.
A little bit like this, I think.
I can see that. I'm honored. Thank you so much. That's one of those first cocktails that like for years Maddie talked about, like, oh man, we got to figure out how to make the smoke signals. We got to figure out how to make this cocktail. Like that's one of the cocktails that like brought us back to Winston to like order that drink. It's just so funny that you mentioned that one in particular. That's so funny.
Okay. So is that a buck, basically, that drink?
I'm not 100% sure. I don't really remember exactly what was in it.
Well, it has these notes. It certainly has a bourbon base rather than, like Woodruff, and it's got a little froth on it. And so to me, it's very reminiscent of the flavor.
So in order to be a buck style cocktail, so there's a bunch of like history about like how the buck style cocktail came about. But basically is like, the thought is like, it's called a buck because like it has a kick. Like there was a non-alcoholic cocktail called a horse's neck in the like late 1800s, and people added scotch to it, and it had a kick, and they called it a whiskey buck. So a buck is basically just, it has to have citrus, ginger, and soda water, and a spirit, right? So that's kind of like what I refer to as a buck. I'm not 100% sure if that one is. I almost felt like it was more like it was boozier than a buck somehow, but I don't remember what was actually in it. But it might be. I mean, typically, if you see like a vodka, a Moscow Mule is a buck. A whiskey ginger, obviously. A dark and stormy is a buck. It's a style of cocktail. It's like old fashions or Manhattans. There are a bunch of different variations on these, and it's actually a great segue here. You can use ginger for like you can make a buck with any base spirit, right? Whiskey, gin, vodka, any of those things. But one of my favorite techniques in modern cocktail bartending, and something that's been around for a really long time, but is really taken off recently, is what's called splitting the base of a cocktail. So you can make a whiskey cocktail, you can make a bourbon buck, right? But if you like Isla Scotch, but you don't want it to be fully peaty, you don't want it to be like the most intense, scotchy, peaty, smoky drink, you can split the base and say, I'm gonna put 1.5 ounces of bourbon and 1/2 ounce of scotch, of that Isla Scotch, the Ardbeg or whatever, and just put a note of that in. So basically the concept of splitting bases for cocktails is just it's a la minute blending of spirits. It's the same thing that distilleries are doing, where they're sourcing, a whiskey barrel from this rick house and from this rick house and from this one, and we're going to blend those together in different proportions to create what our product is. You can do that at home with your own liquor shelf. So like, say you like, whiskey and you like funky Jamaican rum, put those together and try and make a buck with it and see what it tastes like. It basically just kind of like allows you to create exponentially new flavors with your potentially limited home bar. I see a question hand.
Yes. Where do you get is this candied ginger?
Yep.
Candied? Where do you buy that?
I got that one at Trader Joe's. They have the best, most consistent candied ginger that I can find.
Okay.
It comes in a little bag next to the like dried fruits and nuts. They have both crystallized with the like sugar, this is the crystallized version, and uncrystallized. Can
you toss them in the drink for?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, I think like honestly, a lot of bartenders, a lot of like mixologists get like really held up on like rules around cocktails, and I don't believe in that stuff. I just think it's whatever you like. Like if you want to put your candied ginger in your drink, awesome, put it in your drink. If somebody else is like, that's heresy to put your candied ginger in the drink, then like they don't need to put their candied ginger in the drink. I don't know. I feel like I personally don't believe in like rules around cocktails. Like if you like your martini shaken, stirred, doesn't matter one way or another to me. It's whatever you're looking for in your experience.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think I see another hand.
Yeah, I'm right here. Mark Cohn, Rabbi at Temple Emanuel, and I'm here to give the kosher certification for this activity. So not being an alcohol, a beer is always, a good idea. But so this is, can you run us through that ginger mix again? Because that was just outstanding. That actually made this, because I'm just not a cocktail drinker. This was really good.
Absolutely, yeah. So I can walk through it slowly so everybody can make it here. So the recipe, so make a 1-to-1 simple syrup. So we're gonna say you're making 500 grams for this example, right? Or no, let's make it easy, and let's say you're making 100 grams, right? 1 liter.
Can we make it even easier and buy the simple syrup?
What's that?
Can we make it even easier and just buy the simple syrup?
If you'd like to, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think you can find, I don't think I've ever actually bought simple syrup, so I'm not 100% sure where you can buy it, but I imagine you could get it at like a City Beverage or Harris Teeter or something. Yeah. The only thing to know about buying your simple syrup is making sure that they make it in a 1-to-1 ratio, because otherwise then the recipes will be a little bit different. So you might need to be a little bit more hands-on with like tasting as you go and rebalancing for taste if you're not making it yourself, but totally valid to buy your own and flavor it. But yeah, it's the same thing.
You sell it at Ginger Fox? Can I go in and like buy some simple syrup?
We got bottles in today. So yes, in the next few weeks, we're going to be rolling out that.
Oh my gosh, now make it.
So we actually work with one of our house Ginger Fox cocktail is actually a ginger turmeric syrup that we make with we partnered up with Village Juice to take their cold pressed juice pulp. So they press the juice, they make a ginger turmeric lemon shot called the Sting shot, and we take the pulp and turn it into a ginger turmeric syrup that we use for a Scotch sour that we spritz a little Isla Scotch on top. So yeah, we're hopefully going to be releasing one of those like as a bottled mixer within the next like 2 weeks.
Do you make a tamarind? Do you make a tamarind one?
Ooh, I have used tamarind before.
I love tamarind as a mixer. Yeah. Could you just add tamarind to this one?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's like, if I can leave you with anything today, it's that. is like, it literally like use the syrup techniques. If you want to go buy your own simple syrup, awesome. If you want to make your simple syrup, great. But like, if you can use those techniques to customize your cocktails to make like any flavor you possibly want. Like any flavor you possibly want. Like if you love a certain, you love blueberry mint, then like make a blueberry mint syrup. You love, I don't know, whatever you love, like put that in a syrup so you have it to put in a cocktail.
We should go back to the rabbi's question.
I was remembering to circle back. Okay, so let's say 500 grams of white sugar, 500 grams of hot water. Mix those up or blend those up better until all the sugars dissolve. Toss in, for that, I would go 600 grams of ginger. Blend it all up. Strain it through a cheesecloth. And then that syrup in a 1-to-1 ratio with a citrus juice, so lime juice, lemon juice, something like that. But not orange, not grapefruit, because they don't have enough acidity to balance the sugar out.
Could you do cranberry?
You could, yeah. With cranberry is one of those that's like, it doesn't quite work the same. Its acidity level isn't quite the same as lemon or lime. It's somewhere between like orange juice and lime juice with its acidity level. So if you're gonna do that, I would say like do it in a like. Let me figure out how to say this. So basically, if you're going to use cranberry juice, you're going to need to bolster it with some lime juice. So like if you were trying to add, like if you had 1,000 grams of simple syrup, then you'd want to do like, I don't know, maybe like 750 grams of cranberry juice and 250 grams of lime juice. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, and I mean, this may get way into the chemistry of it all, but why, when you said yes to lemon lime to do the 1-to-1, why that and not you said not orange or grapefruit? How does that?
So basically it gets down to sugar content and acid levels. So if basically like you have like lemons are the most acidic of the citrus fruit, they have the most acidity. Limes are a little bit, so like lemons typically come in around like 6.5% acidity. Limes come in around 6% acidity. Oranges are down at like, depending on the season, depending on where you're sourcing them from, depending on the type of orange, they're in the like 1 to 2% acidity, and their sugar levels are higher. So if you're adding in orange juice, you don't have enough acidity to balance out the sugar, and you're adding more sugar. So you kind of just have to work it around to where like, I honestly, like taking a sidestep here, I look at cocktails and like balancing flavors very much like, it's like a soundboard, where you have like different dials that you're turning up, and you're dealing with the flavors, right? You have booze, you have the burn of alcohol, you have the acidity from citrus fruits or from vinegar or from citric acid or whatever you're using. You have sweetness and sugar, you have bitterness, right? So those are the top 4 things, and then salt in there as well. Pro tip, put a pinch of salt in all of your cocktails. It'll make all of your cocktails taste better. It's just like food, put a little salt in there. Not too much where you can taste it. Just put a little salt in there as you're shaking it, and it just kind of like allows
What kind of salt?
So no pun intended on this one. Kosher salt, or like what kind of salt?
Yeah, I use kosher salt. Yeah. No, we make a saline solution at the bar. So we have a little dropper, and we just drop it. We do like 3 drops of a 1 to 4 saline solution.
Okay, great.
Yeah. But it's definitely a way to like, if you've got a cocktail that you've like perfected and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing flavor ever, you can elevate it just a little bit by putting a little bit of salt in there. It's the same thing as with food. It's just allowing you to taste those flavors a little bit better.
So Rabbi, is it 4-to-1 ratio for Passover? Rabbi, is it a 4-to-1 salt to water ratio for Passover?
We can get into a whole thing about gematria and numbers if you want to talk about the appropriate ratio. I mean, 18 is always a go-to, Paul. So really.
I hear you.
Thank you.
does anybody have any other questions about the syrups or the cordials or how to make these at home or anything in general? These are also, so one more thing I'd like to talk about with the cordials. They're the perfect non-alcoholic cocktail mixer as well. I realize I didn't say this right up front, but you can use these and basically just put some over ice, lengthen it with some soda water or tonic water, or, you know, if you really want to dial up the ginger beer, and you have your cocktail. A good way to add some complexity on top of that, and also a good way to add some complexity on top of the whiskey one or the gin one, or, you know, whichever one you're going to be making, is especially with the ginger. Ginger works really good with Angostura Bitters. The label's peeled off this one. This
What
stuff,
kind of bitters?
Angostura.
So that's a good segue. Talk about bitters.
Ooh, what do you want to talk about with bitters? I love bitters.
I don't know how to use them. Tell me how to use them.
In different ways, and generously. So basically bitters are spices for bartenders. Bitters are really potent. So Angostura Bitters is, I think, 47.5% alcohol. It is booze, right? Like your whiskey, your Woodford's in the like 40 range, 40% alcohol, and bitters is like,
bitters is booze.
alcoholic. But you can, you know, a 12-year-old could walk into Harris Teeter and buy Angostura Bitters. It's considered a non-potable bitter by the government, and you want to get into history of bitters and, like, you know, tax regulations and all, prohibition and all of that, we can get into that. But basically, it's like, it was a way of getting booze past taxation during prohibition, and has just been carried over ever since then. So it's still considered non-potable. But basically what it is a really alcoholic infusion of different roots, botanicals, bittering agents, dried citrus peels, any number of things. And there's been a real bitters boom, like for the last 100 years, up until the 2000s, there was one or two brands of bitters. You could get Angostura Bitters and you could get Peychaud's Bitters. So Peychaud's Bitters, classic Sazerac bitters, very New Orleans style, more like tart cherry, anise flavors. Angostura Bitters, classic from Trinidad. So you get all of the like cinnamon, clove, allspice, all of those like baking spice flavors that you think about with, like, you know, more like holiday times, like baking and stuff. Those are in Angostura. So how to use bitters in cocktails? I mean, obviously we dash them. So they've got a little, like, the top of bitters has a dasher cap on it, which is basically just a little tiny cap, like a cap that has just a little hole in it that just lets just a little bit out. So we use them in dash form. It's not accurate, it's not precise, you know, it's basically just however much is coming out of the little hole in the top. But you can use them to, like, garnish. Like for this cocktail, if I were making it for myself, I would probably put a little bitters into the shaker and shake the cocktail, and then float a little bitters on the top. The fun thing about bitters is that they'll actually stay, because they have they're so boozy, they'll float on the top if you have a denser ingredient on the bottom. So obviously you've got sugar and citrus juice and stuff like this, but the bitters will stay right up top. And basically, like, you're just going to get hit with like allspice, clove, cinnamon notes throughout while you're drinking this. And it's a really good way to just kind of like elevate a cocktail. The other ways to use bitters are like in old fashions, obviously. So you have like an old fashioned is simple syrup or sugar, bitters, booze, and ice, right? That's what it should be. Just those four things. People muddle cherries in there and all, and like, that's fine, but just bitters, sugar, water, ice, and booze. So in that case, the bitters are functioning as a way of like balancing the booziness and adding more complexity and depth and bitterness. So bitterness basically just allows it to become a cocktail. Like, you need bitterness in a cocktail, or else, like, it's just lemonade. It's just sugar, right? With the ginger syrup, you get a little bit of bitterness from the ginger, so you don't need to add it in there. But I think bitters are great to put in like just about any kind of cocktail. Like it's worth trying to dash whatever bitters you have on hand in it just to see what it tastes like, because like it'll elevate and like ground a lot of your cocktails. Did that answer the question? I realize I ramble about bitters a little bit.
No, that's awesome. I've seen a movie where they made fun of adding bitters to a drink. And I thought, oh, well, maybe they're old fashioned or out of style or whatever, but they sound like something I should learn about. Great.
Yeah, well, there's a ton. Go to, if you ever get a chance to go to City Beverage, they have a nice little bitter shelf. Total Wine has a nice bitter shelf now too. Like over the last 10 years, there have been just like so many companies popping up that are creating this just like insane bitters and tinctures that you can put in your cocktails to flavor it however you want. So like you have classic bitters like Angostura and Peychaud's, but you also have like vanilla cherry bark. You have tiki bitters. You have mole bitters. You've got all sorts of different kinds of bitters. But just think of them as like concentrated flavoring agents for cocktails, spice racks. Lynn? Or Wendy.
Hey, so I had a question because lately when I go in to the liquor store and you see like vodka has like it's like milk. There's like every flavor known to man, right? So you could buy vodka in every flavor, but is that preferable to, because it's easy? I mean, is that as good as mixing? Like, tell me about that, because I don't know whether you should just buy orange vodka or whatever, you know?
So that's a hard question for me to answer, because like for my palate and for making cocktails for myself, I don't typically make cocktails with vodka for myself often, because it's basically vodka it's just contributing the booze. You're not getting much flavor in there. So yeah, things like infused vodkas are definitely like interesting to start exploring. But I think if you are willing to infuse your own at home, then it's best to infuse your own at home, because you'll save a little bit of money. Obviously, it'll be a bit more of a time investment, but like the product that you could get, like what you're actually going to be tasting, is going to be so much better than the industrialized versions of like, you know, basically chemically manufactured booze. There's very little regulation around, like there's very little regulation or government oversight around flavored vodkas, honestly. So you get a lot of like glycerin added in to, you know, improve the mouthfeel, which like it does, but it's also like, I don't want to drink just glycerin in addition to my vodka. And a lot of the flavorings are artificial. So you won't get as like crisp, clean flavor as you'd get if you made it yourself. But again, if you like it, you like it. And I think that's like, I'm always telling my bartenders, like it has to be this way, but also it doesn't have to be this way. It has to be this way, but you know, it can be anything. Because like it is, at the end of the day, your drink. Does anybody have any other questions?
Honey, say something.
So you're a wonderful bartender, but my question is, what do you do for hangovers after you've imbibed too much?
Oh man, I am still in the lucky, like I don't get too bad of hangovers range, to be completely honest. But it is funny because like I honestly don't drink enough to get hangovers at this point. I think like I got caught up in enjoying what booze tastes like and enjoying the experiences and enjoying the like actually like tasting what I'm drinking pretty early on. So like I find the best way to avoid or to fix hangovers is to not get them. So like if you're putting the work into your cocktails and like you're actually enjoying your cocktails, I find that like you will drink fewer of them, honestly, because like you're actually thinking about, you're drinking consciously at the end of the day. So aside from that, like water and sleep are the only things that I can like confidently say that's what fixes it. Yeah, water and sleep.
I'm playing with the sparkling water and the different mixes and the lime and the salt, and it really works really good just in this mineral water.
Yeah. No, it's also, so salt is also, so if you drink coffee, if anyone drinks coffee in the morning, try it tomorrow morning. Put a pinch of salt in your coffee. Coffee is so bitter and like astringent that the salt content in like putting just a little bit, I mean, literally just like a half pinch of salt in your cup of coffee, it will allow your palate to taste the like actual like chocolatey, roasty notes in the coffee and not just get like blown out by the bitter astringency of it. So like it's absolutely worth experimenting with those kinds of things. Like salt and sugar often get a bad rap, and that's only because people are using them in excess. Like as long as you're like, you know, being conscious of how much sugar you're consuming, being conscious of how much salt you're consuming, they are there to help flavors taste better. I see another hand.
A little bit off subject, but what did you and your wife do in the circus?
Okay, so I played the lead character in a show called The House of Dancing Water. It's kind of a Cirque du Soleil style show in Macau, China, in one of the casinos. Have you heard of like Le Rêve or O from Cirque? It's one of the water shows. So yeah, I was the prince and I rescued the princess every night.
This has been so great, I have to say. I just loved it. Of course, you know, it's our committee, but we should all come together and have a tasting at Ginger Fox.
Oh, please do. Yeah, that'd be great. We do cocktail classes there too. Every Sunday we do our Sunday school class. So there are 8 seats at the bar. And we have a 2 p.m. and a 4 p.m. class. So basically you get to make 2 cocktails, taste through them, learn a little bit about history. It takes it's about an hour and a half to 2 hour long class. So if you are interested in like, you know, learning a little bit more about this stuff, we do this every week. Yeah. Like, I love it. I love doing these classes for like groups who know each other. Like you'll actually talk and you're like, you know, like it's so often you get in these classes and it's just like, does anybody have any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah.
And like, I appreciate y'all so much.
Well, first, I say, yeah, what does the rabbi think about us moving Sunday school to Ginger Fox?
I've been going to Sunday school since I was 4 years old. I mean, I've been in Sunday school since I'm 4. Like, I'm like, now that's a Sunday school I can get my head around.
You're ready. You're ready.
You're ready for a change.
This is great. Lynn, thank you for putting this in. Lynn and Wendy and your committee, and Jane, and it's really, what fun, David. This is really fun to listen to you teach. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you to Scott for asking 5 million questions. I did not tee them up.
Also, we open this up to everyone at any of our classes, but like I'm like genuine when I say this. If you are standing at the ABC store or you're standing at Total Wine or like you're trying to make these syrups and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know what I should get. Please shoot us a message. Like we're available. Like it's Maddie and me. We are behind the Instagram. We're behind the email and everything. So like this is a resource. Like please use us. We love talking about this stuff. We love, you know, sharing this stuff with people.
I have to put in a plug for your champagne drinks, and you make the candy that go with it. I mean, oh my gosh, we should do a champagne class next because that was awesome.
There was also that like French drink we had there. I can't remember what that was.
Oh, the tequila one on the menu now that I had 3 hours ago was also.
What? Did you have the Reboot Paloma?
Yep, the Reboot Paloma is fantastic.
I like that one.
What does it take to get a cocktail named after our little group here?
Yeah.
Ooh, good question. I like that.
Oh, the kosher ingredients are key. So, you know,
like just maybe for the week of Rosh Hashanah or something next year. Like we have the chosen cocktail or something.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like 1 week only. Get it while you can.
Reach out. Just let me know. Yeah, we'll set it up.
Oh my gosh, that's hysterical. Thank you so much. This is great.
We'll work on that as a fundraising.
Pomegranates.
Yeah.
We're going to auction off the naming rights to a cocktail for 1 week.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Nobody can take that idea. We own it. Yes, yes. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you all so,
Thank you,
so much.
David. We'll see you
Enjoy the
next.
rest of your evening. I hope you make delicious cocktails at home forever.